Hey everybody, Michael Davis here, and welcome to Bone2Pick. I'm really excited today to be sitting down with one of my all-time favorite drummers, the great Jared Schonig. Jared is certainly one of the most in-demand drummers on the commercial and jazz scene here in New York. Also one of the most versatile drummers you're ever going to hear. I often refer to him as the Steve Gadd of his generation because he has the incredible combination of great virtuosity on his instrument, but also incredibly versatile and makes whatever style of music he's playing, he's able to take it up a notch. So it's really great to have him here on the Bone2Pick series. We're going to talk a lot today about an incredible new project that he has just released. Just came out last week, and it's entitled 2 Takes, Volume 1, Quintet, and Volume 2, Big Band, which is this one right here. And it's 8 of Jared's compositions. Obviously, the quintet features the small group, and then he had 8 different arrangers arrange one chart apiece for the big band project. I was super happy to get the call to play on it. It's a wonderful project. I encourage everybody to check it out on Bandcamp. Really, really great stuff. It's already off to a tremendous start with the jazz critics, both press and also getting a lot of traction with jazz radio. Jared is a co-founder of the outstanding group The Wee Trio, which has released 5 critically acclaimed CDs. He has toured and recorded with a myriad of artists, including Nicolas Payton, Dr. Lonnie Smith, Donny McCaslin, Darcy James Argue, Tom Harrell, Kurt Elling, the New York Voices, just to name a few. And my own personal experience with Jared, we met and played together for the first time back in 2013 on the revival of the show Pippin. And since then, we've gone on to play hundreds of gigs together. I was super thrilled to have him on the HIP-BONE Big Band CD. And he's also done all our live shows here in New York with the big band, as well as a show we did in Chicago. And this is one of my favorite stories. When we were doing Pippin, we had a wonderful conductor named Charlie Alterman, really talented gentleman and pleasure to work with. And he was playing the keyboard chair and also conducting at the same time. And Charlie's a great musician, but probably not like a stone cold bebop guy, I would say, safe to say. And one day I walked into the theater quite early. There weren't that many people. And all of a sudden I hear somebody shredding giant steps on piano. So I thought to myself, I don't think that's Charlie, but I'm just going to go take a look to make sure. So I climb up the little ladder and up to the conductor's podium. And sure enough, it's Jared Schonig playing piano, just shredding giant steps. And I was like, okay, that's it. So that his versatility extends beyond the drums. It's quite amazing. So anyway, long intro. Without any further ado, Jared, thanks so much for coming up to New City and sitting down with us and talking about your extraordinary career.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about this. So
Okay.
We'll start. Usually I go back to beginning times of where you grew up and everything, which we'll get to. But I have a whole bunch of questions about this, and let's start with, where did the original idea come from? What gave you the thought to put these 2 out together? Because I can't think of a time when anybody's done it. It's very cool.
Yeah, I hope I'm the first and maybe not the last. But, the Wee Trio was always like my creative outlet for my music and, a co-led trio. And as that kind of had its ending, because a couple of the guys kind of moved on with their lives in different ways, I needed another way to, showcase my music and just have my creative endeavors out there. And I knew I wanted to do a small group because I had a couple of guys that I really wanted to play with, Marquise Hill on trumpet and Godwin Louis on alto. But my dream was always to do a big band record. I don't know why. Well, I know why, because I love it. I grew up listening to big band before I ever listened to small group jazz, and Buddy Rich is, one of my heroes. And so obviously you are one of my heroes as well for playing with him for many years. But I've always been a fan of how other arrangers take on standards or just other people's compositions. And maybe 3-4 years ago it popped into my head, wouldn't it be cool to do my own big band record? But then I kind of thought, man, I'm not really good at arranging. Why don't I just have like these amazing cats and band leaders that I've worked with just do my charts, and I'll have a book of music that's incredible, and and then the finally, like, the idea to put them out together was really what elevated it, just to, like, so I could show how music can sound different and be interpreted by others, and especially great artists and great arrangers.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk maybe about the arrangers themselves.
Sure.
I know you have. I can assure you, every chart on there is a 10. It's really they did such a great job, every single arranger. But tell us the arrangers that you picked.
So I had 8 different arrangers. All of them are very well respected and huge in the field of modern jazz composition and arranging. We'll start off with the great Jim McNeely, who I met maybe 7-8 years ago in New York doing the BMI Jazz Composers Workshop, which I was a member of for many years. And then along with him was the great Mike Holliber, who was the co-director there, who I've gone on to play in his band and do records with. You've got Alan Ferber, who's a Grammy-nominated amazing trombonist and composer-arranger.
Also a guest on the Bone2Pick series.
Amazing. Also, the wonderful Miho Hazama, who is a super incredible writer and arranger, who is now with the Danish radio big band as the conductor there. But I've played in her band a ton and gone to Japan with her multiple times. She's just one of my favorites, period. We've got Darcy James Argue, who is someone I've been aware of since college and played his music at Eastman, at the great Eastman, also where Mike is a graduate of. And and I've also toured with his band. Who else? We have John DeVersa, who, funny enough, went to the same high school as me in California.
Oh, really? Wow,
yeah.
Okay.
And great guy who's now at University of Miami. Lawrence Hobgood, who is a wonderful arranger and pianist who I met playing with Kurt Elling and who I've played with ever since, maybe 10 years now. And the newest arranger was Brian Kroc, who I had heard of but not really checked out, but Darcy gave a very glowing recommendation to check him out, and I did, and I loved his stuff, and he was just really wonderful. Gave a great rendition of Gibbs Street.
Yeah. Boy, it's such a ambitious undertaking to get everybody to arrange, and they all did it. It just melds together really nicely to me. And to your kudos to you for your compositional abilities. I think that's the thread that keeps it so cool. But really great. What made you pick the studio that you picked? Because I had worked there a little bit, but I thought it was really a great room to play in for the big band.
Yeah, so the studio that Mike mentioned is Octavian Studios, which is in Mount Vernon, New York. And we did this in 2019, end of 2019. And my favorite studio in New York is Power Station, formerly known as Avatar. But they were going through a big renovation during that period of time. So Octavian was one of my favorite studios that I had done a bunch of big band records at. The last one I probably had done there was guitarist Joel Harrison's record, and Mike Holliber did his record there.
All right, man.
And I really love the drums they have. They have a great, kind of Gretsch Ludwig hybrid set, and it was very comfortable for me to play in an isolated room with basically the whole big band in one room and enough space for all of you guys to have space. I had James Farber come and engineer the record, who is obviously a living legend.
Yeah, one of the best. Yeah.
One of the best ever. And he loves the studio, so he was totally down early on. It's
cool.
Great.
Let's talk a little bit about the personnel that you chose. And I know from doing my own big band projects, it's always a delicate matter because you have so many great musicians here in New York and so many players you want to include and showcase. And inevitably, seems like somebody gets left out. But I thought you did just a wonderful job from top to bottom. Every section sounded great in terms of section playing. The soloists are world class. I mean, it's unreal. I was listening to it yesterday, driving around town. It's just tremendous. So, just share your thoughts about how you kind of tread that fine line.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, there are so many guys in New York. You could put 5 big bands together of different personnel. I kind of modeled it after a few records I'd done recently. One of the great Tony Cadleck on lead trumpet. Your record had a few different sections of personnel. Also, Mike Holliber did it kind of that way. So I had a giant list of all the people that I really wanted on there, and whittled it down to kind of like 2 different sax sections, with Carl Moraghi still playing Barry in both sections, but like I wanted to get a bunch of different soloists in there. And then with the trombones and the trumpets, like again, there was only like 1 personnel change because we did it over 2 days. So there was only 1 personnel change for each of those sections. So mostly like the continuity between the sections was there for both days, which I thought was great. And then, I mean, as a drummer, I play with a lot of bass players that I really, really love, who become my partners in rhythm. So I had 3 bass players on the big band record. I had to include my brother, Dan Loomis, who's, the bass player from the Wee Trio, and arguably my most trusted compadre in rhythm, along with the great Ike Sturm, who between the 2 of those guys I've played a millions hours of music. So yeah, Dan is on a track, Ike is on 2 tracks. And then the bass player who I probably played the most with in the last 10 years is Matt Closey, who's an incredible musician and is on the Quintet record as well. So he kind of got to see a little bit a difference of how the music evolved over time. Because otherwise, no one is the same on the 2 records, just Matt Closey, which I thought was cool. But yeah, I always knew that I needed to have the great Mike Davis on the record playing lead, the great Tony Cadleck playing lead, and then, yeah, some of the other soloists, Donny McCaslin, Jason Rigby, Charles Pillow, who's Mike and I are on his big band record.
Troy Roberts, amazing
wonderful
solo on
soloist, incredible. John Gordon on alto, Dave Pietro on alto, Marshall Jilks on the lone trombone solo on the record, which is super cool. And then, yeah, Nir Felder plays a lot of great guitar solos, and 2 of my favorite pianists, period, are Dave Cook and Adam Birnbaum. So I knew I had to have both of them on there also.
Yeah, awesome. It's just tremendous. Let's talk a little bit about the role of the producer. And a lot of folks, musicians, of course, know, but producer's kind of like it's kind of like the director of a movie. You're really in charge of overseeing things and making a decision if you've got the take, if we need to do whatever you might need to do.
Right.
So the producer plays a very important role, and obviously you co-produced it, so you had a huge input of that yourself. But you had Mike Holliber, who's just a world-class musician, and as you mentioned, he has his own great big band, and he's a great arranger and phenomenal ears.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was a great fit, and,
yeah.
It's always a pleasure to work with Mike. But talk a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, Mike was super integral to the process of just making this as good as possible. He was in the booth when we did all the recordings, and I'm just trying to be in my role, playing the drums as best I can, and be the supportive musician. So it was really, really helpful to have Mike's ears in the booth and in the studio. As far as like everything from you got that take, the vibe was great, the energy was great, the tempo was great, to like third trombone, you're a little flat. Yada yada yada. But so him being in the booth was incredible. But then after that, just in the editing process and the mixing process, like that's when it gets so elevated, because he's checking out all the scores with me and going, and there's a wrong note there. That note was a little late. Should we fix it? Should we not? And just kind of we came together to have these artistic choices with the music, and I could not have done it without him. He was such a huge, huge part of about the sound of the record, because he, similar thing is that he used James Farber and Brian Montgomery to mix his record, and I wanted to use those guys because I really loved the way that his record sounded and came out. But yeah, also for the Quintet record, my wife co-produced it, and she is an amazing musician and has great ears, and was really an integral part of that session too. Just being in the booth and giving feedback, and I couldn't have done it without her either.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I can attest to her outstanding musicianship. I get to work for her every once in a while, and she'll let me know if I'm a little out of tune or a little out of time. She hears everything as well. So, very cool. And lastly, let's talk a little bit about this interview is going to come out before, so this is a good time to do a little promo for it. But the first live showcase of the band at Birdland on October 17th. Tell us about that and who's going to be there and whatnot.
Yeah, so we're going to do it up. We're going to play this music live, which was incredibly hard. I'm a little nervous, but I'm very excited. No, I'm not nervous. It'll be amazing. But
I'm nervous.
I'm super excited to play it live for people because the record came out incredibly well. The hardest thing was to whittle down who I was going to have on the gig. So we've got, let's see, who's playing? Charles Pillow, Jason Rigby, a wonderful sax player, Lucas Pino, is going to play.
Oh, wow, great.
So a couple other guys were unavailable. Let's see who else. Carl will play. Mike's playing.
Alan
Ferber is going to be there playing.
Jeff Nelson on bass.
Jeff Nelson on bass. The trumpet section is the same. Tony, great Scott Wenholtz, Brian Peresci, and John Owens, and then Adam Birnbaum on piano, Nir Felder on guitar, Matt Closey on bass.
Awesome.
So what will be cool for Matt is he didn't get to play all the tunes on the record, but he'll play all the tunes live, and same for Adam Birnbaum on piano. So it'll be neat.
Nice. And it's 5 o'clock start, right?
5 o'clock start.
October 17th, Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, one set only.
Yeah. If you're in New York and Birdland's on 44th Street, come down and check us out. We'd love to see you there, and it's going to be a great afternoon of music for sure. Okay, I said we're going to go back to the early years.
Let's take it back.
You're one of the rare individuals who grew up in L.A. and didn't stay in L.A.
Correct.
Most people go to L.A. Talk about it. I know your folks, lovely people and outstanding musicians in their own right. Just a little bit about growing up in such a musical household and growing up in LA.
I was born in LA in the San Fernando Valley. I don't know if I can say this, but the porn capital of the world. You might want to edit that out. You dig. Ever since I was a tiny little child, I heard music around the house, whether it was my mom, who's a classical pianist and a piano teacher for 40, 50 years, to hearing my dad practicing for one of the numerous film dates or orchestra dates or casuals. It's what they call it out there when you play a club date. I always heard music, and
your dad was a percussionist
and a great drummer who's been on hundreds and hundreds of movie scores and played with the LA Phil and just done a ton of stuff. And he would be practicing some weird instrument that I never saw, and he would tell me, "Oh yeah, that's a hammered dulcimer. I'm going to go play it on White Fang the movie or something." So that was always cool to hear. So I grew up with these really incredible parents who, I never. Until high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my life. I had played classical piano early on. Obviously, Greg gave me some giant steps chops. I was really a pretty serious classical pianist from about age 5 to 14, 15, and hadn't really touched the drums all too much. I was aware of the drums, and I had gone out and kind of fiddled around and figured out stuff and played to some Led Zeppelin records. I didn't take lessons until high school. I had a wonderful teacher named Jerry Califf, who's a colleague of my dad's and just a great musician. I was focused on piano and just focused on being a kid. And then kind of the big turning point of my life came when I was a sophomore in high school, and my parents, they decided, well, we don't really like the trajectory you're going on in this one high school you're going to, the neighborhood high school. And my dad had known about the school in LA proper, which was about 25, 30 miles from my house, called Hamilton Academy of Music. And my dad woke me up on a Saturday morning, like really early. He said, let's get in the car, let's take a drive. It's beautiful out, you know. I said, what, Dad, what are you doing? We get in the car and we drive for about half an hour, because without traffic it takes about a half an hour to get to my high school. And he says, oh look, there's that Hamilton school, like yeah, my buddy's kids go there, let's check it out. So he takes me in to the school and he says, oh look, they're doing auditions for next year, why don't you go play some drums? I said, Dad, what are you talking about? What is this? You did this? So yeah, unbeknownst to me, my dad had set up an audition for me to play some drums for the jazz band, and I was very weirded out by it, but I was like, fine, I'll do it. Yeah, whatever. Just can we go home and get some pancakes?
Yeah, that's a great way to approach auditions. You don't have to worry about getting nervous.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe, and then so they called me back the next day. And they were like, "Yeah, we want you to come here and play. You know, be the only drummer in our third band." And I was like, "Okay, that's great." I mean, I don't really want to leave my other high school, but my parents thought this would be a good opportunity for me, and it was. I mean, I credit this first year of being at Hamilton as like definitely my being roped into the music life. I was there with a lot of amazing musicians who have gone on to do wonderful things, including like Kamasi Washington and Cameron Graves, great pianist, and the lineage of musicians who went to Hamilton is wide and far. So needless to say, like I probably by halfway through that year, I said, okay, I think I want to play drums for the rest of my life.
Wow, okay.
And at that point I was, very, very into jazz, still listening to some other music, but yeah. And then, I started at the bottom there and worked my way up to being the top drummer when I was. It was a very competitive atmosphere.
Bet, yeah.
A lot of great drummers went there, and the great Abe Laboriel Jr. is an alum of there, and so I would see his name on these trophies and on these walls, and so it was cool.
Wow,
yeah,
very cool, very cool. Briefly tell us about the Commute.
Yeah,
I remember you told me that
the
years ago.
The Commute is rough, and as a kid, you kind of don't know better. But I woke up at 5:30 every morning to get on a bus at 6:30 every day. Takes an hour and a half to get there.
A Muni bus, not a school bus.
It was a school bus.
Oh, it was a school bus. Okay.
It was not a Muni bus, but a school bus that would go through all these funny neighborhoods, through the valley, and then make its way either over the 405, which the traffic was horrendous, or, on Pacific Coast Highway, which you felt like you were going to fall into the ocean at any moment. But yeah, it was an hour and a half each way, so I'd get home super late. Like the bus left at 4, get home at 5:30. But at this time I was listening to a ton of music. It was the first time I heard John Coltrane on the bus. I can always remember a great French horn player played this for me. My favorite things. That's basically the first small group jazz I had ever heard, which is pretty incredible.
What a great environment to be in, though.
It was great. I mean, obviously well worth it. My parents knew that they took a gamble, and it worked. It worked out.
It certainly did. Well, let's fast forward a little bit to you mentioned Eastman School of Music, and I'm sure you had a similar shock to your system coming from California. I grew up in Northern California, but when I remember the first winter in Rochester, I was just like, "What is this?" But share some of your memories about being at Eastman.
Was it rough or what? The first time I saw snow was when I went to audition there, and I believe it was in April or something, So you would think that the weather would be a little bit better, but still snows in Rochester in April. And first winter there, freshman year, maybe a good 30, 40 days of snow, but every year it just kept getting worse. And boy, did I miss Southern California. And I'm not a huge fan of LA in general, obviously, or I would have moved back there. There are great things, and the weather is great. But I think Rochester was a great way to prepare me for New York City weather, because it's definitely not as bad as Rochester. Yeah. Rough.
And you studied with John Beck?
I studied with Rich Thompson.
Oh, you studied with Rich, of course, yeah. Okay.
Rich Thompson, an incredible teacher and a great musician who kicked my butt in all the ways that needed to be kicked. I came into Eastman like only listening to music post 1965, which is always what my buddy Dan likes to make fun of me about. I never listened to anything earlier than like the second Miles Quintet, and Rich opened my eyes to the jazz drums lineage that needed to be learned, and I credit him with a lot of the way I sound and the way I think about music, because he really was an incredible teacher.
Sure.
And he's a great player and a great guy, and I owe a lot to him, and it was great. I ended up playing in a marimba quartet as well, and once we played for John Beck. He was like, "Yeah, pretty good." But I also like to tell the story that when I auditioned for Eastman, I kind of didn't either see or didn't want to see that you had to do a legit part of your audition too. Like, I just thought I was there to play jazz drums. And I look on the page and it's like, oh, you need to play this excerpt, this timpani excerpt, this marimba excerpt. And I said, shit, Dad, Mom, what do I do? Well, you got to go get the books and we'll play it. So I go across the street to the bookstore and I get the books and I sight read my timpani and my marimba audition. And Beck said something like, that was really good. But you're sight reading, aren't you? I said, yeah, sorry, I messed up. But he's like, okay, very good. But he knew, but I passed that part, thank God.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's a great 1-2 combination, having Rich Thompson and John Beck as running the percussion and jazz drum department there. It's fantastic. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the move to New York. And I think everybody goes through that anxiety. I certainly did, but it's a big jump to make a decision where you're going to move. Obviously, for folks like us who do what we do, it's New York or L.A. And what was it? What made you want to move to New York? And why not L.A.? And then, if you would share the story about, because Jared's diabetic, and the fact that what you had to look out for your own health issues.
Yeah. So when I came to audition for, I believe, Manhattan School, I had never been in New York before. I said, oh my God, there's a jazz club here. This is where I want to live. And I always enjoyed the energy of New York versus LA. I am a relatively energetic person. And just the pace of life here is more my style. I like to move quickly and to get a lot of things done. And the LA kind of yada, yada, yada is not my thing. It's a great place. But so, I had made up my mind that I was going to move to New York after college, I guess pretty early. I think my parents would have liked me to come back home and to maybe get a graduate degree somewhere so I could teach or have something to fall back on. Because I just wanted to move to New York to play jazz. That was my goal in life, and partly succeeded. But I had a few buddies who had graduated early from Eastman who were, second-year grad students when I was a junior, or they were seniors when I was a junior, and they had moved here and kind of set up a little bit of a shop as far as playing some local gigs and jazz gigs and stuff. But a few of them had worked at Apple Computer. And, as Mike said, I'm a type 1 diabetic, and, I need insulin to live, and I need insurance to pay for that insulin, especially as a poor college student or post-college student moving to New York. And so a very amazing saxophonist and a great friend, Brian Van Arsdale, he was working at Apple, and he got me a job there. I worked there for basically 2 years so I could have health insurance. I worked... Basically, my first year in New York, I was working 40-hour weeks there. I was teaching at a private school, and I was playing gigs in the nighttime. So life was pretty chaotic. I can't remember much of it. It was also, partying a little bit, And as time progressed there, I was playing more, but still not really playing with any big artists. But playing a lot of creative music. And I was playing with a great guitar player named Jim Hirschman. Restaurant gig, $50 restaurant gig, drive to Queens, 3 hours, drive back, pay for parking. You're not making a lot of bread, but Jim had asked me one day, are you ever interested in playing Broadway shows? And that was not on my radar whatsoever. And I said, yeah, what's it entail? What's the deal? And then he told me all about it, which we can talk about if you want. But basically, I credit Jim Hirschman for getting me into the Broadway scene. He recommended me to two fantastic drummers. And long story short, I ended up quitting Apple because I was also getting sucked into that, retail life, and I knew that I couldn't do both at the level I wanted to do. So yeah, that's when I started subbing shows and getting health insurance through the union.
Yeah, nice.
So that was a big turning point for me.
Well, it was a perfect segue. I wanted to talk about Broadway, and Broadway is a really important part of the New York freelance scene, for sure. And having, we just went through the pandemic, and now Jared and I are doing a show together right now called Moulin Rouge. In fact, we just won 10 Tony Awards last night at the award show, and really happy that we won Best Musical. It's great, and typically that means the show is going to run for a while, so we're happy about that. But let's just talk about it a little bit, because it's I think as you just perfectly described, it's not something that's on. If you're an actor or a singer, that's something that's definitely on your radar as a possibility. As a musician, we're certainly aware of Broadway shows, but I think, I'm not sure that you think, I just want to be playing in a Broadway pit,
right.
But that becomes a very important part of what we do as freelance musicians. And it's an important, it really, especially for New York, it's really the main freelance component, I would say. Yeah. But maybe just to, kind of continue along that line of what you were talking about with Broadway.
Yeah, so I hadn't had it on my radar. I was brought in, and this great guitar player Jim Hirschman recommended me to sub, and so I started subbing on shows. And the idea of that is basically you get the music to a Broadway show, you get maybe a video, maybe an audio recording, and your job is to go in there and sound as much like the drummer as possible. Whether that drummer plays louder than you, softer than you, more licks than you, whatever, it doesn't matter. Your job is to go in and make sure that no one else notices that they're not there. And for me, that was a challenge that I really, really dug. Also, the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done in my life. I always say, I've only been nervous 2 times in my life, to play Broadway shows and to play with Wynton Marsalis when I was 18. So, so I got into subbing shows, and through that, I thought, wow, this is actually a really nice way to play music and to make a living and to supplement my creative endeavors and playing jazz gigs and then doing a different show a night. And then it was just, I've always been a guy who's enjoyed doing a lot of different things, as most high-level musicians like to do. I always thought that I would be playing different types of music, on the road or in town, but never Broadway shows. But I had a background of doing, high school theater, so I knew what it was like, and had some ideas of what shows could be. And there are a lot of fun shows, there are a lot of non-fun shows, but it's been a great part of my career here in New York, and something that I definitely don't take for granted. I've had a lot of really, really good shows and a lot of musically fun shows. And I'm very grateful for that. Yeah.
I think also you mentioned subbing as for a drummer. To me, that's the most challenging and nerve-wracking thing I could possibly imagine. I always feel like the drummer. Yeah. The drummer's driving the bus in every band. So, but on a Broadway show, the drummer is the lifeblood of what's going on. Yeah. And to have to come in and it's bad enough to sub on a trombone chair or something, but you're so exposed in the obviously, they tapped right into your talents, and then you were able to be, you're a very coveted guy now. People are trying to get you to go to do their shows and stuff and I think I agree wholeheartedly. It's something we don't take for granted, and we're happy to, like I said earlier, we're super happy that we're going to be at Moulin Rouge for a minute. So, so that's a good thing. Let's talk about, you alluded to it earlier, let's talk about balancing the creative side with the work side. Our great videographer Kent Smith and I were talking before you got here. when we came up, there was this is years before you. There's the studio musicians, probably similar to your dad.
Yeah.
The idea was versatility, and you could play a whole bunch of different styles, and super wide range of stuff. And you weren't so focused on the creative, the artistic thing. And now I think it's, in a way, even though there's less work, it's kind of healthier and refreshing that, some of these people who've gone for the creative are now doing some of this studio work because they have a very distinctive sound. Right. And like you did, you're able to adapt. You're such a high-level musician. You're able to adapt to whatever it is. If you've got to play a show that's Latin-based or more classically based or whatever that is. Maybe just talk a little bit about how you approach that, because I'm sure, a lot of times we all think, I just want to be doing my creative stuff 24/7, and that's not that practical for as a musician. I mean, some occasionally get to that point, but it's a balancing act.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to have a career playing music, I've always wanted to make a living playing music, not obviously having a career, but I saw all the stuff my dad did. He even taught middle school band for a year just to supplement income, and you always have to do a lot of different things, and if you are able to do those convincingly, then you should be able to work doing anything in music. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think that was the way my career would turn out, but my job is to make every situation sound good. And coming from a background of playing lots of different styles, early on, I knew that I could adapt to different situations and make a Broadway show sound good, make my wee trio sound good, make singers sound good. I play a lot with singers, and that's a totally valuable skill to learn how to play dynamically, get with intensity. I think that just the sheer amount of gigs that I've done where I was either told that you're too loud or my ass was kicked in some way just makes you better. I mean, I've played at the Jazz Church in New York for 16 years, and one of the most boomy rooms, yet also one of the most beautiful places to play. And I kind of learned how to play quiet and intense there. So that has brought a lot to my playing. But yeah, my job is to make everyone sound good. And sometimes I can, do a little of my own shit here and there, especially in a Broadway show. I learned very early on that don't put your shit in your Broadway show, because no one else is going to be able to do it, and then the cast will be mad that you're not there. Right, so that's what happened to me at Pippin. I overplayed the book. I played all my hot licks, and then when the subs came in, the actors got pissed because it wasn't cool enough for them, or the shit they were used to hearing wasn't there. So that was a nice wake-up call that, okay, play the book, serve the purpose of the show. It's not, it was my first show. I was a young kid, super pumped. But yeah, as you learn, as you get older and you get more opportunities to originate books, Broadway books, you learn that you can put your stamps in there in certain moments. But for the most part, you're serving the music and you're serving the purpose of the show.
What a great way to describe it too. I mean, any situation you're in, you're there to make the thing,
exactly.
feel good and sound good, and even as brass players, I know we don't have the same level of responsibility that a drummer does, but lead trumpet players will take stuff up an octave, or bass trombone players tend to want to go the other direction, take stuff down an octave. Right. But on a show like that, it is really important to be aware of that, because as soon as they get used to hearing that, they're going to say, "Oh, I want that double C every night." And all of a sudden you just reduced your sub list by 50%.
Totally.
But very cool. What a great way to an outlook that's important, I think, for everybody to take.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about teaching, and I know we were talking about it earlier last week. You've got some nice guest artist appearances coming up, and I have a feeling with the traction you're getting with 2 takes, that's just going to keep getting more and more. And I know doing those myself, it's one of my favorite things I get to do is go out and work with young and programs that are going to hire a guest artist they're so receptive because they're open to it, so they're thirsty for whatever they can get. But maybe talk a little bit about that.
I'm really pumped to kind of like take this next stage of my career as like doing the guest artist thing at wonderful high schools and universities. With the We Trio, we did a lot of clinicking and just guest artist stuff around the country, whether it be like an assembly for a middle school just playing jazz, or even elementary schools, to like, doing a lot of guest artist stuff with colleges and working with, students of all different discipline levels. It's always been a wonderful part of a musical life for myself. So just the fact that I now have these like 8 charts that I can bring to different schools is really great for me. So yeah, I'm starting out the day after our gig in New York. I'm flying to Indianapolis, and that'll be the first school that plays my music at Butler University. So I'm very excited about that. I'm going out to do some workshops and a concert in the great city of San Jose, California. It
is great.
And I'll be at the Harker School there I'm bringing a bunch of people from New York, which is great, to play the quintet music. And then next year I have a couple things. One that I'm super excited about is I'm going to be in part of the Great American Jazz Series at the University of North Florida. With Marquise Hill and myself. So we'll be doing a bunch of clinics and concerts, playing both the small group music and the big band music. So I believe Marquise will get a chance to play the big band stuff, which he hasn't at all, which will be really cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I love being able to give back just the stuff that I've learned and the ways that people have helped me along the way. And if we don't teach our kids and our young musicians how to do it right, then there's just going to be a bunch of assholes out there. You dig.
We've already got plenty of that anyway. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and talk about your family. We mentioned your lovely and very talented wife, Amy. Your son, and you have a new one on the way.
I do, yeah. We have a beautiful son, Jackson, who will be 2 coming up in December. And we are due with our second child, which will be a girl. No name yet, and possibly the same birthday. So we'll see.
Oh, that's great.
And then it's in about 3 months from now, I'll have 2 children, full-time job, and going on the road. So thanks, Amy. Thanks, any help we can get. That's very exciting.
I was going to ask you what the next 5 to 10 years look like in your career, but you probably just set it up. Like you're going to be.
Well, listen.
What are some things that are on the horizon for you? I'm sure. From the creative side, I'm sure there's going to be many more projects.
Yeah, I want to keep my solo stuff going. I want to be able to travel and bring my music to other people around the country and around the world. I got some stuff brewing in Japan for my music. They're big fans of big band music there, which is great. I just want to, it's something I think about, but I'm going to focus a lot on my family and making sure my kids grow up with their mom and dad being together and just like being there for my kids. I was very fortunate that my dad worked in town and didn't go on the road a lot. I think that was something constantly he battled. I think he had a lot of opportunities to do big things on the road, but stayed in town and was there for me and my brother, which is an amazing thing. And I'm very fortunate. I'm also very fortunate to have Broadway show where we can stay in town and see our families and hang.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but somebody asked me the other day if I would do another big band record. Boy, I don't know. I think I might buy a house instead. No.
Yeah, I need to collect a couple years of my pension, and then maybe I'll have enough money to do another big band record. That's awesome, though. As we close out, and I often ask this question, and you're the perfect guy because you're still a very young man. What advice do you have for young musicians that are looking at Jared Schonig and say, "Oh, I want to do what he's doing," and I always think it's important to realize that, the business is fluid and it's constantly changing. Obviously, it's changed dramatically since I was new in town. But even for yourself, a young person, it's changed a lot. And I'm just curious when you look back on how well you've navigated through the scene and achieved the success that you have, what would you offer as advice to young people?
That's a good question. A lot of the good advice is out there. You just need to know where to find it and who to find it from. I think always be prepared, for the gig that you're going to do. Practicing is really important, but seeing music and listening to music, most importantly, seeing live music is an integral part of the way we just internalize music and internalize the process of playing music. Because we could listen to recordings all day and transcribe and do that, but it's nothing like being out there and seeing music. And I think that the younger generation has kind of forgotten that seeing stuff and seeing music is really important. I think obviously coming out of the pandemic, there'll be more opportunities to do that. And I guess the last bit of advice that I learned from my dad is keep your mouth shut. And it's not something that I've always done. And there's a lot to. It's really important to just do your job sometimes, and that's something hard for me as an extroverted person most of the time. But I think that just doing your job well, and you don't have to talk about how well you do it sometimes is my own problem. But I think that's the advice I'd like to pass on to some people.
That's great advice, and I'll take it myself.
You dig.
Jared, this has been really a pleasure. I want to remind everybody, we talked about it at great length, but check out this record when you can. 2 takes, both volume 1, the Quintet, and this one, volume 2, the big band. An awesome record. I wish you much success with it. You're already having tons of success.
Thank you so much.
And super fun today. Thanks for coming. We're longtime friends, and we've had this on the list to do for a while, and this was the perfect vehicle to do that. So thanks for coming to New City, Jared.
Much
Everybody,
love.
check out 2 takes, and we will see you next time on Bone2Pick.